Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 62 of the World of Sports podcast. I am your host, Diego Sandoval, and joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Logan Ring. Logan, say what's up to the people.
What's up, everybody?
We've got a good episode in store, a shorter one we think it will be. And a lot of that has to do with there's nothing to talk about in Major League Baseball because Major League Baseball does not exist at the moment. If you are confused by that, go watch our last episode. We kind of broke it all down towards the end of that episode. If you're confused about the lockout, anything like that, because I know a lot of people are. I feel like we did a decent enough job explaining it for most people to understand what we were saying. But today we still got the NFL and the NBA. In the NFL, we're going to do our weekly picks and bold predictions, as we always do. And then we're going to, in the NBA world, we're just going to talk about one team, and it's the Los Angeles Lakers. It's the Lakers, so you're going to get media attention no matter what they do. But I think now with the fact that maybe they're not performing to most people's expectations, a lot of people are talking about them. We've heard a lot of things from a lot of different analysts, people clashing. They're just a very fascinating team, in my opinion, this year, and a fascinating team to keep keep watching for, because so many things could happen. But we're going to talk a little bit about them later. And that'll be this episode. It'll be kind of a shorter one, I imagine, after last week was a much longer episode than we're usually used to. Before we get started, follow us on all of our social medias. Just look up the World of Sports podcast. You'll find them there. On our Instagram, there's a link to everything in our bio at TWOS podcast. Let's jump into our NFL picks. As of right now, after last week's games, we are knotted up at 123, 70, and 1. Honestly, the record is impressive, but I think it's more impressive that we have the exact same record, because it's not like we're not picking the same teams every week. It's just like one week you'll get two more than me, the next week I'll get the two. Like, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I'm also just kind of guessing on some of them, so I think that's impressive, to be honest.
However, that tie changed last night in the Thursday night football game. The Pittsburgh Steelers went to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. I picked the Vikings. Logan, you picked the Steelers, and Minnesota came out on top. Kind of had a scare there, but for majority of the game they dominated. But the Vikings did come out on top, and so that means I take a 124-71 lead to 123-71-1.
I am not mad when the Steelers lose, so I'm perfectly okay with that.
All right. Let's get it started with the Sunday games. The New Orleans Saints traveling to New York to take on the Jets. Don't overthink it. Take the Saints in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I got a bold prediction later on, but I've picked the Jets a couple times, and it just doesn't really work out. So I'm going with the Saints.
It's always safe to bet against the Jets. I also have the Saints as well. I think I said that. But moving on to an NFC South matchup, we have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Logan, who do you got in this one?
I got the Falcons in this one. They're actually playing a lot better recently, or they've actually been playing really bad recently, to be honest. That's what I should have said. But the Panthers, I don't know. I just don't really believe in them a ton. I love the Cam Newton story, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they're a very good team still. So not a matchup I'm super excited for, but I still got the Falcons.
Yeah, I really can't get behind either of these teams. Neither of them are going to make the playoffs, but I like Cam Newton. I think that he has either the capability to have one of the worst games of the season, which he did last week, or go out and play really well. Like, it's very hit or miss with Cam Newton at this point in his career. I'm gonna go with the Panthers in this one. I just believe in the team just a slight bit more, and a lot of that comes down to their defense, because the Falcons don't have one of those. But yeah, I neither of these teams are very good.
Yep.
Moving on, another matchup of two bad teams this year. The Seattle Seahawks taking on the Houston Texans. I mean, what has happened in Seattle is just kind of sad. Like, they have been, for the past 5 to 10 years, they have been consistently one of the better teams in the NFL. And, you can say Russell Wilson was injured for a large chunk of the year. But in the past couple of weeks when they've had Russell Wilson, they looked good last week. I'll give them that. They looked good against the 49ers. But they just haven't looked like a Seahawks team that we're used to seeing out there. Now, that being said, they're playing the Texans, who they're in the same situation as like the Jets. You don't want to bet on them.
Yeah.
Like they got walloped 31-0 by the Colts last week. They lost to the Jets the week before. I'm going to go with the Seahawks in this one, even though I don't think that they're really that good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm just betting against the Texans in this one. Like the Seahawks defense is absolutely terrible, but the Texans just scored 0 against the Colts. So, I mean, for any team, this team shouldn't be like the biggest challenge. And he still got Russell Wilson, so hopefully he can do something. But yeah, 2 more bad teams.
Yeah. Switching over kind of, I mean, it's definitely a change of pace to 2 teams that could have a very good game against each other, or it could end up like the first matchup and not be good. And that's the Raiders heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Who do you got in this divisional battle?
I think we got a difference in this one too. I got the Chiefs. And this matchup, for some reason, we were just talking about it earlier. This matchup, somehow the Raiders just like win. Like I don't know why when they shouldn't win against the Chiefs. But yeah, I mean, it could be a fun one for sure. But I just think the Chiefs have kind of found something recently. Their defense has been so much better. And I mean, obviously the offense is going to be good. They're figuring out. So yeah, I mean, I think that they found something, and against the Raiders, it'll be another challenge, but I got the Chiefs.
Yeah. I completely understand the pick. As a Raider fan, I'm picking the Raiders. I have not picked against them this year, and I honestly probably won't. But as a Raider fan, I watch every single one of their games, and this team really likes to beat teams they're not supposed to, but lose to teams that they honestly should blow out of the water. This year, they've lost to the Bears, the Giants, and the Washington football team. They've beat the Cowboys, the Ravens, and I guess the Steelers are an okay team. I don't really know, but all I'm saying is they beat teams that they're not supposed to, and they lose to teams that they're supposed to beat. And this just feels like it's setting up for that. For the past 3 seasons, Derek Carr has decided to become a god when he plays the Chiefs once a year. So I could see it happening. And I want it. And I want to cheer for it to happen. So I'm going to go with the Raiders.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Moving up from my team over to your team, another divisional battle that could really either kind of set up what the division's going to look like going forward, or completely throw everything out of the window and just cause chaos. It's the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. I think that this will kind of propel the Ravens ahead in this division. I think they take down the Browns. I just think they're the better team. Lamar's been struggling as of late, but we know that he can figure it out. He's a great quarterback. And I don't know, the Browns just have too many question marks for me to fully kind of go all in with them against the team that's at the top of their division.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's similar to the matchup we just talked about, where basically if I'm picking against the Browns here, I'm saying I don't think they're making the playoffs.
Yeah.
But
that's what it is with the Raiders and Browns this week, I think. 6-6. It's very similar situation.
I mean, it's still like possible, but it's like way less likely. And yeah, if the Browns win this one, that division is all like within a game, which is wild. But yeah, I mean, the Browns, you look at them for some weeks and they're just so disappointing. And that's unfortunately been most of the weeks, honestly. And then they have a couple games where they play great. Like the first game without OBJ, they played amazing. And then you're like, oh, they found it, but then it just doesn't really happen. But their matchup with the Ravens, sometimes it seems like it's just an amazing game, just so closely matched, or the Ravens just blow them out. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's a really good one. Obviously, I'm a Browns fan, so like I can't root against them. I'm gonna go with the Browns, but I totally understand the question marks and everything. I've watched all the games, so I understand how the Browns have been disappointing. Like that's just the bottom line. So yeah, I'm hopeful, but I have to be prepared too.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this game plays out because the last game the Browns played was 2 weeks ago against the Ravens. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is pretty much back to back, not for the Ravens, but for the Browns. And what really concerned me in that game is Nick Chubb ran for 16 yards and Kareem Hunt ran for 20. Like that. And the Browns need those guys to run for a
Yeah,
combined 150 to 200 yards minimum to win games, I feel like. And
right.
that's not saying they can. Those are two very talented running backs that gets behind a talented offensive line that's slowly getting healthier. So we'll see. But I think it should be a good
Yeah.
game.
What the other thing is like a big reason why the Browns haven't figured it all out is injuries, yeah, but it's also the way the team is constructed. Like Baker is still hurt. You could
Yeah.
tell watching him. So hopefully 2 weeks off is going to help that. But also, like when they played last or 2 weeks ago, Lamar threw 4 interceptions
Yeah.
and they still lost. So you can look at it both ways to see what's going to happen because it's kind of a toss up.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, a lot of divisional matchups this week. In the NFC East, the Washington football team is taking on the Dallas Cowboys. I am very interested to see this game because Washington has kind of turned it on in the last couple of weeks. They've become the defense that we expected them to become. They're on a win streak. They beat the Raiders, held them to 15 points. We know that's an offense that can score a lot of points. They held the Seahawks to 15. They beat the Panthers. They held the Buccaneers to 19 points. They beat them 29-19. This team is picking it up, and the Cowboys are kind of not picking it up. They're slowing down, I feel like. And, they've lost to the Chiefs, Raiders, and then they beat the Saints last week. I think the football team goes in and wins this game and kind of says, hey, this division isn't all for you, Cowboys, because then that would put Washington at 7-6 and the Cowboys at 8-5, and there's still room to move there. So I'm gonna go with Washington in this one.
Yeah, I like it. We got different picks for this one. I agree. They're definitely these teams are getting closer together. You kind of saw the Cowboys running away with it, but yeah, like they lost to the Raiders, and then the football team just beat them. So I do think it's going to be a pretty close matchup. I'm excited for it. I've kind of been rocking with the Cowboys all year. I think I didn't pick them the first week, and that's it. Which I mean, they lost to the Bucs, so I mean it's fine. But I still like this Cowboys team. Their run game has kind of been disappointing recently for some reason. It just seems like they haven't been running the ball very much at all.
They've been super banged up, both running
Yeah,
backs.
Ezekiel Elliott, he like was limping on the field and still playing. Like it was pretty bad. But yeah, I'm excited for this one because it's one that whatever the outcome of this game happens, it's going to be like a big, I guess, push for either the Washington football team or the Cowboys are going to run away with it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it will be a good one. We got a lot of differences this week, so somebody's going to pull away or it'll just stay even. Next up, I think this is could be seen as a not so easy pick, but I think it's an easier one. I have the Tennessee Titans taking down the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, it's very similar to the other bad teams in the league. Don't overthink it. Bet against them.
Yeah. I just saw a stat where the Jaguars, I think it was like the last 5 games, they've scored less than 17. It's just bad. And the Titans just a couple of weeks ago, they were like, oh, they're going to be like the #1 team in the NFL somehow because of how easy their schedule is. And then they lost a game, but they're still that team. Even without Derrick Henry, I think they're still very talented. And I got a bold prediction later, but yeah, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm picking the Titans.
Yeah. Moving on, we have the red hot Detroit Lions taking on the Denver Broncos. If you missed it, the Lions won a game last week. They beat the Vikings. They are now, what is it? 1-10-1, 1-12-1, 1-11-1, one of those. I think they stay hot. I think they beat the Broncos in this game.
Wow.
I don't believe in Denver at all. The Lions are one of the best one-win teams in NFL history. They are playing teams so hard and so physical. I think that they can come away and win this game.
I like it. I wouldn't have thought we would pick the Lions for any game this year, but I'm picking the Broncos in this one. It's another difference, but I do like the pick because the Broncos have been absolutely terrible. And yeah, the Lions should not have one win. Like they should have beat the Ravens. They beat the other team. They've been in like one score possessions for like at least 5 games. It's crazy. They've gotten really unlucky and they're also bad. But they shouldn't have one win. So this is definitely 2 bad teams going against each other, but the records are pretty deceiving. So
yeah, and
we'll
also
see.
I need the Broncos to lose because they're also 6-6 somehow. Moving on to, in my opinion, it might be a less exciting matchup. It's the New York Giants coming to LA to take on the Chargers. The Giants are just in shambles this year in terms of injuries. It's really unfortunate. Daniel Jones is going to miss another week, I believe. They're missing like half their receivers.
Yeah, do you know who their starting quarterback is?
It's Mike Glennon, but also I think
Okay.
he's in concussion protocol. So it could be Jake Fromm, who was like a high school sensation and did nothing since then.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Basically, moral of the story, pick the Chargers in this one. Yeah, I've got LA.
Yeah, me too. I don't really have much to add. I don't even know who their quarterback is, so that's not a good sign at all. And it's the Giants.
Although Saquon Barkley could have a good game. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Moving on, the San Francisco 49ers are headed to Cincy to take on the Bengals. Logan, who you got?
I got the Bengals in this one. I still believe in them. I don't want them to win this, but I just think that they're a very talented team. And they've had a couple rocky weeks recently, but they're still pretty good. And they're obviously going for a playoff position. So it's not like they're going to take any games off. And the 49ers are still a talented team, but they're still not good. So yeah, I got the Bengals winning this.
I also have the Bengals. They're just the better team, I think. More explosive on offense. And I think the Niners struggle with that explosiveness when they're on defense. They kind of want to slow the game down when they're on offense. So then when the other team goes out and just explodes for a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase touchdown, something like that, doesn't work well for them. So I've got the Bengals as well. Now, in one of the games of the week, there are 2, in my opinion. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are taking on the Buffalo Bills. And this is just very, very tough luck, in my opinion, for the Buffalo Bills. They are kind of in a rut right now. They've lost 2 of 3, and now they have to go face the the Buccaneers. The Bills just lost the lead in their division. Like, they're not doing well, and now they're just said, "Oh, here you go, face off against the Super Bowl champs." Like, it's very poor timing. I've got the Buccaneers. I just think they're the better team. The Bills just haven't looked like the Bills as of late. Again, last week's game was kind of a tough way to tell because that game against the Patriots was just so bad and weather was all over the place. But I think in Tampa Bay, I think it honestly will be a shootout and both quarterbacks are going to have really good games. But I've got the Buccaneers. Tom Brady just knows how to win games.
Yeah, I agree. The last week's matchup just sucked because I was so excited for it. And then it was like a defensive game because the weather was the best defense.
Yeah.
And it was just, it just sucked. But I'm really excited for this one. I have the Bucs in this one too. Just the same reasoning pretty much. It's Tom Brady. And I just think the Buccaneers have been better recently. But it'll be really fun. I'm excited.
Yeah. Moving on to the Sunday night game, an NFC North showdown, arguably the biggest rivalry in the NFL. It is the Green Bay Packers taking on the Chicago Bears in Green Bay. Now, rivalry games always have that sort of flair, like, oh, we both hate each other. We're both going to play really hard. But I just think the Packers are such a better team than the Bears that that's going to really outweigh the fact that it's a rivalry game in Lambeau Field. It'll probably be snowing. I got the Packers.
Yeah, me too. Aaron Rodgers knows how to play in that environment, and
Justin Fields doesn't.
Yeah, Justin Fields hasn't played in the NFL for even a year yet. So I mean, I got the better team in this one for sure, but I think it could be fun. And the snow games with Aaron Rodgers just for me are kind of like iconic. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, he's one of maybe like 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Tom Brady's one of them as well that can legitimately throw the same in the snow as he does just normally. Like he's just that good that it's just like, oh, there's no difference.
Yeah.
So I think Rodgers has a good game. Now in the other game of the week, Monday Night Football, gonna be a dandy. The Los Angeles Rams taking on the Arizona Cardinals, divisional matchup. 2 of the top teams in the league, in the NFC West right now. The Cardinals are in first place at 10-2. The Rams are second place at 8-4. This could be a huge matchup going down the stretch. Who do you have in this one?
I still got the Cardinals in this one. I do think that they are, without injury, the more consistently better team. But the Rams have also gone on stretches where they just look insanely dominant. Their offense and defense is so good. And we were just talking about how their defense on paper is just like absolutely insane. And some games they don't really show that, but on others you just know it works out. So this is going to be really fun. I think it could be a shootout, or I don't know, maybe the defenses step up. I'm hoping for a shootout because it's obviously more fun, but I think the Cardinals have the slight edge in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the Rams had a much needed confidence boosting game last week where they beat the Jaguars by 30. They're coming off back-to-back losses actually. But then you look back at the beginning of the season, the Rams were a very dominant team, and I think there's going to be a very good game. It could go either way. Both teams are relatively healthy. Obviously, the Rams lost Robert Woods for the year, which sucks. But like in terms of the players that can play this season, I'm pretty sure they're all pretty healthy. So I've got the Rams. I think the Rams do it, and I think they make the division a bit more interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to watch this one for sure. We have a lot of differences this week. A lot of stuff to go down. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 differences.
Dang.
That's big time. So yeah, we're gonna do a post about it. So go check that out when we post it. But first, let's get into our bold predictions. I'll go first. It's for one of those big games that I mentioned. I think that both Josh Allen and Tom Brady, quarterbacks of the Buccaneers and the Buffalo Bills, I think they both have 4 touchdowns. Now, I'm not putting a label on it because it could be any type of touchdown. Brady will most likely be 4 passing, but I'm going to allow for Josh Allen to get 3 passing and 1 rushing, and I'll count that for myself. So I think both quarterbacks have 4 total touchdowns each.
I like that one. I'm going with the Titans and Jaguars. I think the Titans defense is just going to step up, and the Jaguars offense is so bad. I think they hold them to 10 points or less. I'm kind of expecting this to be a blowout, but hey, you never know. But if you're going to bet on a team to not score 10 or more, then it's the Jaguars right now.
Yeah. Both my bets are for the big games. So I have Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp going for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I just think that when they play tough opponents, the going gets tough and they need to score points, Matthew Stafford is just going to throw to Cooper Kupp every single time because that's just what they do, and that's worked this year. So I think it'll be a shootout, and I think that because the Rams are going to have to keep up with the Cardinals because they're both high-powered offenses, I think Cooper Kupp is going to see a lot of work, and he's going to have a very good game.
Mm-hmm. I got a running back for this one in the Saints-Jets game, Alvin Kamara going 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. I could see the Saints getting up big or it being close, and he's still probably their number 1 offensive option right now for sure. And he's been consistently good when he's healthy. So if you're going against the Jets, who don't have a great defense and just aren't a good team overall, I think this is a game where he could have a big one. So yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot of looks rushing and receiving. So I think that's a great prediction. And yeah, it's the Jets. You can't go wrong. Yeah, those are our bold predictions. Those are our picks. Go check them out on our Instagram. That post will probably be going up tomorrow, December 11th, the day before the Sunday games. Let's move on from the NFL and to our final topic of discussion, and that is the Los Angeles Lakers. Just to kind of set the scene, I'm sure you've heard all about it. The Lakers, obviously, they went out and got Russell Westbrook during the offseason and brought in a bunch of old heads. They've returned 3 guys from their team last year: LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Talen Horton Tucker. And as of right now, what are we, about month and a half, 2 months into the season? 2 months?
2 months, probably.
2 months. The Lakers are currently the 7th seed in the Western Conference at 12-12. They have a 9-7 record at home in the crypto.com center, 4-6 on the road. And in their last 10 games, they are 5-5. Very average. And that you can't really put it any other way. They've been an average team this year. And yes, they have dealt with injuries. LeBron namedly being the biggest one. But even with LeBron on the floor, this team has been one of the most inconsistent in the NBA.
Yeah, we even last week we were like, oh, it's no big deal. They're just figuring it out. And I still think that's true, but you can't act anymore that it's not at least slightly concerning. Just because they haven't shown any signs really of putting together a consistent stretch of just being a good team. And yes, they've dealt with injuries for sure, but even when LeBron plays, and LeBron plays really well, which he's still having a good year. Like he's averaging 25 and a half points. And
7 assists, 6 well, rebounds. Yeah. He's shooting better than he has of late, at least.
Yeah. Like mid-range and 3-pointers. I mean, right. Like he isn't even getting to the rim as much anymore, and he's still being as dominant as he ever has been. So it's disappointing to see the other players not step up. And Russell Westbrook had a very good stretch. But when he plays with LeBron, there are some times where it just looks really bad. And yes, they still have to figure it out, but it does bring in the concerns where it's like the obvious ones, like LeBron doesn't have a shooting point guard. Doesn't really work out with him usually. But he also hasn't played with a non-shooting point guard as good as Russell Westbrook. So it's still really exciting. And you can tell when they make together, it's just so nice when they get in the pick and roll. It works so well, but it just doesn't happen a lot. And then when one has the ball, the other one is usually just standing around. And Anthony Davis is probably the most important player on this team right now. And he just hasn't really been the superstar that we want. Honestly, he's been just like a lower level all-star player this year. And that's not what you want out of Anthony Davis. And yeah, I think it's the defense, like you talked about, that's what they were able to do so well the last few seasons. And they've had a bad defense. Like it hasn't been just average. It's been bad, like bottom of the league bad. They can't guard anyone. So without that, something has to change. And I don't know if it's only chemistry, but I don't know what changes can really be made on this roster with how much money they're spending.
Yeah, I don't see any mid-season trades happening at all with this team, because you just think about where all their money is. It's just a bunch of 1-year contracts with old guys, and I don't know if anybody wants to take that on. About the defense, there's flashes. This team has shown flashes of being a dominant team and being one of the worst in the league. Like it's the most fascinating, weirdest team I've ever watched, because the defense, there's times where you say, oh yeah, those 5 guys on the court right there have never played together before, this season. And it's like, oh, well, what else do you really expect? But then it's times where it's like, okay, you can't be letting that happen. Like,
right.
It gets to a point where you can have a learning curve, obviously, especially with the amount of new players that are on this team. But we're going to reach a point where it's time to say, okay, you've had enough time to learn. Now go do it. And for me, that hasn't come yet, I think. And it's not because I don't think they're underperforming. They're absolutely underperforming. But with the current state of the NBA and where every team is laid out, especially the Western Conference, the Lakers are sitting in an okay position right now for how poorly they've played. I think that 7th seed in the West, I would take it. If you told me this was how bad the Lakers were going to play, I would say, oh, we're screwed. But
Yeah.
looking at the West, the Mavs are 12-12 at the 6th seed. The Clippers are 14-12 at the 5 seed. Like there are teams in besides Suns, Warriors, and then the Jazz are starting to heat up a little bit. There's really not much else that really impresses me in the West. I think that what it comes down to is, can the Lakers figure it out in the next, I'll give them like 3 weeks, like end of the year, I would say. Then it's like, okay, if you're not above 500 by a somewhat comfortable amount of games, 3, 4, 5 games, then it's like, okay, we need to, something needs to change. And I don't even know how they would change.
Right. Yeah, you can look at it from different sides, and I totally agree with that because the West has been worse than the East this year, which hasn't happened in 20 years or something. So it's definitely open, but you can also look at their strength of schedule. They've played like one of the easiest schedules in the league so far, so they're going to have a bunch of tough matchups coming up. And with that, if they play well against those teams, then it's going to obviously be a big confidence boost. So if they are able to go on a big stretch, which they're capable of, they have 3 players who are MVP level players at some points. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I will say Anthony Davis at the center position is obviously what this team needs. You cannot run Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and like Dwight Howard on the court and think offensively you're going to be great. That's just not shooting. You can't shoot with that team. LeBron's the best shooter, and Westbrook's going to take shots, but not make a lot of them. So yeah, you have to run AD at the 5, but that also is very concerning because of how banged up he gets. He's not a physical player sometimes. It's like on defense, he's obviously great and he can hold his own, but I don't think he can hold his own for 36 minutes for like 60 more games. He's going to get banged up. So that's pretty concerning. And I think that's why they have a traditional center out there along with him a bunch of the times in the regular season, is because you're protecting him. But in the playoffs, this is going to be a different team. That's very far away right now, so they do have time to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, if it doesn't happen, like you said, within like the next 3 weeks, I'm definitely going to be at least a little concerned, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it happens every single year in the NBA with 2 guys on the Lakers teams. I think the Lakers have 2 of the best mid-season on players in the NBA. They just turn it on down the stretch. That's LeBron James and Russell Westbrook. Like these 2 guys, they start off not, I don't want to say they're not trying as hard, but there's definitely something that they can switch on that they always have towards the end of the season, where if they need to go take over a game, they both can. And we've seen, the past, especially Russ in OKC and even in Houston and in Washington, beginning of the season, everyone's bagging on Russell Westbrook. He doesn't fit anywhere. He's not good. And towards the end, and by the end of the season, he averages another triple double. And you're like, when did that happen?
And winning.
Right. And while also winning games. And it's the same with LeBron. Oh, he's not playing a bunch of minutes. He's past his prime. He's declining. And then by the end of the season, oh, wow, he's top 3 in MVP voting again. It's like, these are 2 guys that I'm not worried about. I think LeBron and Russell Westbrook are 2 guys I'm not worried about, because if both of them on the court sometimes causes issues, but the Lakers have done an all right job at kind of alternating them as the main playmakers on the court. It's Anthony Davis. And that's what the discussion's been around Anthony Davis. Throughout his career, he hasn't been the most physical player. But that's been fine because he's been one of the best, if not the best, shooting big men in the league. Not even from 3, like just the mid-range. Like he used to be automatic. He would make every single one of those. And so he wouldn't have to go down and bully guys in the paint. But now he is not shooting the ball well at all. Like I don't have the numbers, but I imagine it's one of the lowest clips of his career.
Yeah, he's shooting 19% from 3 this season on 2.1 attempts. So
yeah, like obviously he's not going to take as many shots because he's not holding the ball up there as much with Russell on the court. But if he's not going to be the physical center that team needs, he has to be able to hit his shots. And he just hasn't been able to do either of those things, which I think is probably the main reason why the Lakers are where they are right now.
Yeah, I agree. The Anthony Davis situation is just so weird. And it's not even a 3-pointer. Like you said, like mid-range shots were his thing. Like he didn't shoot a lot of 3-pointers, but mid-range shots was why you had to like step out and guard him at the mid-range just because he'd hit those. And then now that's closing up the lanes for driving, especially if you have an actual center along with him. He can't really do much. As like a lob threat, obviously he's going to be there, but in the post and everything is what he was so good at, especially in the playoffs in 2020. They were just unstoppable because of that. And he hasn't shown that at all. I will say, like, the goal of this team is to win a championship, obviously. Right. And in the playoffs, this is way too far ahead to look at, but I am excited to see what Westbrook does. And AD usually steps up in the playoffs. Last season, he was injured. You can't really blame him for it. But yeah, I mean, the three players that are on this team, two of them have been very, very big playoff performers. One of the best in LeBron James. And then Russell Westbrook, if he is able to do it too, that's three people who would be insane in the playoffs. So that's what I have to still look at now.
Right. And we know they don't care about what seed they have going in.
And I still think you need like a top 5 seed.
Right.
But if you get like the 6 seed, it's scary to play 3 good teams back to back to back. And then the finals, if best case scenario. But yeah, it is still early in the season. There's no need to overreact, but there's some concerns that are fixable, but still scary to have been seeing that are still not fixed, I guess, that it's still happening. And that's my main point is the finals is what this team wants. And there's a really long way to go before that. So you can look at it as they have a long way to go or they got a lot of time to do it. And either one of those is not wrong. So that's it.
Yeah. And we'll close with this. What is one thing you would say this Lakers team needs to do to turn it around, or a player that needs to step up, or an aspect of their game that needs to improve?
Yeah.
What would you say it would be?
I think it's the defensive identity of this team. They had really good defensive players before, but I don't think this team is incapable of getting close to that again. Russell Westbrook's not a bad defender. Anthony Davis is one of the best in the league. LeBron, when he wants to be, is one of the best in the league still. He won't do it in the playoffs every single possession because he's going to get way too tired. He's 37. So, but on possessions, when you need a stop, you got 3 guys who can do it really well. You can put a guy like Avery Bradley in. Even on defensive possessions, you can put a guy like Dwight Howard, and defensively, it's going to be good with those 5. So I think it's the defensive identity of this team. I don't think they're really playing together as much as they should be right now. But yeah, I mean, you could look at like a single player and say like AD needs to step up, which yes, he does. But I think the defense, if they get that, like they're like 18th or something in the league, it's not good. If they get that up to top 10, they're going to win a ton more games if that happens, because like I'm going to mention the Cavs here. Their offense is not good. Their defense is top 3. They're 14-12. They have a better record than the Lakers. That's kind of similar to what the Lakers did when they won. Obviously, their offense was a lot better, but their defense was way better than their offense was, and they won a championship because of it. So I think they just need to step up on that end. Frank Vogel, I mean, he's still their coach. I think he's capable of doing it, but it needs to happen for them to actually be a championship contender.
Yeah, I completely agree that I think defense is the number one thing. I am also very against the Lakers are doing poorly, let's fire Frank Vogel, because we know that's not the problem. Like that, he won a championship with the Lakers. Like, he's a good coach. This team just hasn't meshed. Like, and that's not his fault at all. The front office said, "Here, Frank Vogel, take 12 new guys and 3 returners. Good luck." But aside from defense, I just think this team needs to be better when it comes to turnovers, because you look at their offense, and in the games that they win, Russell Westbrook and LeBron James each have 2-3 turnovers. But then you look at the games where they lose, they're trying to do way too much with the ball. Either whether it's, full court passes, whether it's just not paying attention to having the ball in the post and a guy just comes back and takes it from you. This team in losses has turned the ball over so much to the point where it's like, that's really all. If they didn't have all those turnovers and turn the ball over at an average rate, they would have won so many more games by now.
Yeah.
So I think it's clear that just the defense needs to get figured out, and offensively, it's just take care of the ball.
Yeah. The going into advanced stats real quick, the Lakers they have the 7th most turnovers in the league, like per game. The teams under them are the Pelicans, the Magic, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Cavs, and the Rockets. The only non-super young team is the Warriors, who have the best defense in the league and a top 3 offense. And that's why they're number 1 in the league. The Lakers don't have that luxury at all. They're an old team. They should not be turning the ball over this much. I know you have Russell Westbrook and LeBron James on your team, but it doesn't matter. Like they should be able to figure it out how good of passers they are. They're just careless turnovers. If you watch it, it's just like full court passes for no reason when the guys guarded by like 2 players. Like that's just an easy turnover. So I totally agree. I think those 2 things, turnovers and defense, are really the main things that they can turn around and are actually like capable of turning around. But yeah, that's concerning that they have these many turnovers, but it's also, I mean, there's like 3 players that stayed from last year. So
Right.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a learning curve. We said it at the beginning of the season. I think both of us didn't expect the learning curve to take this long with this many veterans. But again, that's just the way it works. And part of me might be excited a little bit if we see playoff LeBron show up a little bit early if he needs to take over and win some games. But yeah, I think we're going to leave it at that unless you have anything else to say about the Lakers. There's work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I still have fun watching them and stuff,
Yeah,
and that's
I
kind
still
of
have faith in them as well. Like,
yeah, I don't
they're
I
so talented, you can't just give up on them.
yeah, I don't believe they're my favorites to win the championship at this point, but I think that they're going to pretty easily be a playoff team when it's all said and done, and people are actually predicting them to be like a 10th seed. So
Yeah, that's just not happening.
I don't see that happening, but we got a lot of season left to go, so we'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening. That's it for today's episode. We talked about the NFL and our week 14 picks. And then gave our take on the whole Los Angeles Lakers situation. Everyone's talking about it, so we decided to hop on the bandwagon as well. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Again, follow us on all of our social medias at TWOS Podcast on Instagram, link in bio. Yeah, this has been the World of Sports Podcast. And for my co-host, Logan Ring, my name is Diego Sandoval, signing off.
Signing off.